Interestingly enough, my mother's family of 5 kids that she grew up with, the only natural born children are my sister and I out of those 5. My oldest uncle Joel, as I said, adopted a boy. His name was David. We played together some as a kid. And then my other uncle, Emery, he had a kind of a foster lady daughter, lived with him. She was a couple of years older than I was. Her name was Mary. And then her sister, Elsie, lived on my Uncle Joel's farm. And eventually, the one Mary was adopted, and the one Elsie on the other farm was never adopted. She just grew up there. I've lost track of those 2 ladies. Mary married a man in Wilmer that was an electrician, worked for the power company, and he was electrocuted up on a power line. And I've tried to find her, but I can't seem to catch up with her. Elsie, my folks used to see her a lot. She lived in the Atwood area on a farm also, but I have lost track of her too. Those were the cousins on and then my Uncle Hilding, the one that went to Minneapolis and worked at the grain exchange, he adopted a daughter. So those 3 cousins were all adopted cousins and kind of came into the family after I was on my father's side. His middle brother, Elmer, had a beautiful farm in Litchfield. He was very successful. And he had 3 children. Lorne, who was exactly my age, and I used to play a lot with him. And Arlen, who was my sister's age, or about 5 years younger than I. Of course, didn't play a lot with them, but when I'd be at their farm, we'd be together. And then a daughter, she was born, I remember, I was staying at their house, and I didn't stay at their house very much, their farmhouse. But I remember getting up, and Amanda, her mother, made us breakfast on the wood cook stove on this big farm, big kitchen, I remember, at the farmhouse. We had breakfast, we went out to play, we came back in, and she'd gone to the hospital and had a baby. Just like that. And then this uncle, Elmer, died when he was 32 years old of a brain aneurysm. He was working on a threshing machine, standing up on top of it, working with a crew of guys threshing the grain, and a hot July day, and he collapsed, fell off onto the ground. They took him to the hospital and he died a few hours later. He just had this massive bleed in his brain. And his kids were maybe, the oldest was maybe 10, and on down to this little girl who had just been born. And so that was a big tragedy in our family. My dad was really upset over that, and that was maybe a year after his dad died. And so, those 2 tragedies were just back to back. He did everything he could for Amanda, and probably maybe tried to be closer to her than she even wanted to, but she had family in this town of Litchfield where she'd grown up. And she moved in with her mother, raised these 3 children, did a fantastic job of raising the kids. The middle son, Arlen, became a CPA and became the treasurer of a huge book company in Duluth, Minnesota. And he became very successful. She just did a fantastic job with those kids. She worked in a produce company, sorting eggs, doing things like that. I mean, just very basic work, but she took care of these kids and got them educated, and they all turned out to be very successful.